Most Demon Slayer fans remember the Swordsmith Village story arc. At the end of Muzan's meeting with the 12 Kizuki, Muzan sent Hantengu and Gyoko to attack the Swordsmith Village, hoping to down the Demon Slayers by destroying the source of their Nichiren swords. We all remember how that didn't go as planned because the Hashira were able to handle the demons. However, let's switch up the scenario a bit by imagining that AKAZA was sent to the Swordsmith Village instead. We are not going to consider how things would have gone down if AKAZA, Hantegu, and Gyoko went together because it wouldn't be much of a contest. They'd easily overpower and kill the Demon Slayers there. So, we are looking at a more interesting scenario, which is if AKAZA was sent alone to the village. How would the Demon Slayers hold up against the upper rank 3 demon, and would they still be able to win in this situation? Well, let's get right into the video to find out the answers. The first matchup we'll be looking at is between Muichiro and AKAZA. This is quite interesting because in the actual story, we see that Muichiro was able to go one-on-one with the upper rank 5 Gyoko and managed to defeat him. It's important to note that the only other hashira who's gone toe-to-toe with an upper rank demon is Zenitsu, even though his opponent Kaigaku was a relatively novice upper rank demon. This makes Muichiro's feat rank higher than Zenitsu, so it makes you wonder if he's also strong enough to take on the upper rank 3 demon AKAZA. Let's consider some things to get a reasonable answer. First of all, Muichiro doesn't really have a lot of extremely impressive feats under his belt throughout the story. Although he did manage to fight the upper rank 5 demon alone before facing Kokushibo in the Infinity Castle arc. However, we all remember how that wasn't much of a fight initially, as it was more of a humiliating smackdown because the upper rank 1 just wiped the floor with Muichiro doing that encounter. Regardless, when Sanemi, Genya, and Gyomei joined him in the fight, he did manage to unlock the red Nichiren sword, allowing him to get a few good hits in as well. So overall, his matchup with Kokushibo could be termed a respectable fight considering that he managed a comeback at the end. Moving on to talk about his abilities, recall that he unlocked the red Nichiren blade. He also possesses his Demon Slayer mark, which he got during his battle against Gyoko. He's also the only known hashira with the ability to use the mist-breathing technique. However, these stats aren't enough to conclude that he'd be able to defeat AKAZA. We have seen the upper rank 3 defeat people like Kyojuro, but it's not just a telling fact, since Kyojuro hadn't unlocked his Demon Slayer mark or the red Nichiren blade. Because of that, we are still going to rank him higher in terms of strength. Sure, Kyojuro may not have been ranked as a really tough opponent, but you can say the same about a marked Tanjiro and Giyu, who also has his Demon Slayer mark. That's like going up against twice the strength Muichiro has. Giyu and Muichiro are very closely matched when it comes to strength, and it's difficult to place one over the other. Tanjiro is also very strong, so to see the demon take on these 2 demon slayers at the same time shows just how powerful he is. On that note, it's safe to say that he'd most likely kill Muichiro in a one-on-one fight. Good thing he's not the only demon slayer there. The next hashira we'd match against the demon is Mitsuri. In the past, we have seen her take on the upper rank 4 demon, but she didn't fight him alone. She had the help of Tanjiro, Genya, and Nezuko, but in this battle, she did most of the work and had the most impact, so this fight shouldn't really be undermined when considering some of the feats under her belt. Even after pointing this out, it's still not enough to rank her higher than Muichiro or even conclude that she'd defeat AKAZA. When you consider how Muichiro managed to defeat an upper rank 5 demon alone, it speaks more of his strengths than Mitsuri's joint effort to defeat an upper rank 4 demon. Once again, to conclude this matchup, we'll consider AKAZA's ability to fight back Tanjiro and Giyu. So with that being said, Mitsuri won't be able to defeat AKAZA. Now we have concluded that neither Muichiro nor Mitsuri would be able to overpower the upper rank 3 demon, but what if they team up to fight AKAZA? That brings us to the third matchup, Muichiro and Mitsuri combining their efforts to take on AKAZA. Even after this team up, you have to remember that AKAZA held his own against a more powerful Tanjiro and Giyu. Another important thing to note is that AKAZA only lost that fight because of 2 main reasons. The first reason is that he lost the motivation to keep fighting, and the second is that Tanjiro had a very important role to play in the battle. It was like a pivotal moment in his story, being that he managed to unlock the red Nichiren blade and the transparent world, which allowed him to enter a selfless state and then decapitate AKAZA. Despite all of this, let's look at the 4 fighters in the 2 duos to conclude. Without a doubt that Tanjiro and Giyu are a more powerful team. As mentioned earlier, Giyu and Muichiro are pretty much evenly matched in terms of strength, but putting Tanjiro and Mitsuri side by side, you see a clear gap in strength, with Tanjiro unsurprisingly coming out on top. So with that conclusion, Muichiro and Mitsuri teaming up still won't be able to take down AKAZA. We have come this far, and this upper rank demon still hasn't met his match. Does this mean that there wouldn't be any hope for the Swordsmith Village if he attacked? Well, that question is about to be answered because we are not done just yet. There's still one last matchup that could prove decisive in a battle against the upper rank 3 demon. For this battle, we are involving the entire cast of the Swordsmith Village, and this means that AKAZA wouldn't be facing just Muichiro and Mitsuri, but Nezuko, Genya, and Tanjiro would also join them in the fight. Now, that's a packed lineup, but would it be able to take him down? Let's find out. The first thing to get out of the way is that this battle is time-based, meaning that each Demon Slayer is only as strong as they were in the Swordsmith Village arc. For example, Tanjiro isn't in his prime, meaning that he's not the same Tanjiro that went up against Muzan. This is a less powerful version of Tanjiro that can't unlock the Demon Slayer mark, can't use the red Nichiren blade, and also doesn't know how to use the transparent world. During the Swordsmith Village arc, Tanjiro also hadn't mastered the sun-breathing technique as much as he did when he teamed up with Giyu against AKAZA, so he's a lot less powerful than he was in that fight. Looking at some of the other fighters like Genya and Nezuko, there isn't any track record to suggest that they would play a pivotal role in the fight. Even though they both have some special abilities, they won't be enough to do any serious damage to AKAZA, and when talking about stamina, they'd most likely be out of the fight with one good blow from the upper rank 3 demon. Another thing to take note of is that AKAZA has the compass needle ability, which makes him one of the best picks when going up against several opponents simultaneously. The compass needle allows him to detect all the incoming moves from his multiple opponents so he can efficiently block them. To make the odds less favorable for the Demon Slayers, we find out that Tanjiro isn't even as powerful as Mitsuri in the Swordsmith Village arc. He's just somewhere beneath her strength level because he hasn't gone through the intense training that made him the powerful Tanjiro we are familiar with. Now with Tanjiro being placed just below the weakest hashira in the arc, Mitsuri, what does that say about the fight against AKAZA? It's like the main man being injured in a game, and so it's not looking good for the Demon Slayers in this scenario. We have come this far, and even after the entire cast of the Demon Slayers team up, the odds aren't still in their favor. Sure, it's disappointing seeing the Demon Slayers not meeting expectations, but you have to admit that these upper rank demons are formidable, especially from 3 upward. Okay, some might say the matchup wouldn't be complete without seeing the Demon Slayers fight AKAZA in their prime. So, let's conclude our video with that scenario. For that, we'll be looking at Muichiro when he has the Demon Slayer mark and Nichiren blade. Mitsuri would have her Demon Slayer mark. Tanjiro would have his Demon Slayer mark, red Nichiren blade, transparent world, and selfless state abilities. Then Genya and Nezuko are in their prime as well. Alright, in this kind of matchup, the Demon Slayers would surely take the win against AKAZA, especially since here we have Prime Tanjiro, who we have already seen defeat AKAZA while having only Giyu on his side. So yes, the Demon Slayers in their prime would defeat AKAZA without a doubt, but if we are restricting it to the time of the Swordsmith Village arc, then sorry, but the upper rank 3 is taking the win. And that's what would happen if AKAZA was sent to the Swordsmith Village.